David arrived home from his first semester in college. He was given a ride to his house by a friend who was also coming home for winter break. David is Charlotte's older brother, and as you may know from a previous episode, Charlotte and David's family has just moved into their new home. They're the new neighbors for Bobby, Craig, and their parents. I am Joseph. This is Input English. Let's get started with our story about David and his homecoming from his first semester in college. When David came in the door, it was unlocked, so he let himself in. He had his suitcase and a large duffel bag full of dirty clothes. This house is new to David because when he went off to school, they were living in a different house that the family was renting. This was the first time David had ever seen this house, and he navigated to it by the address only. When he came in the door, he heard Charlotte playing the French horn, and he saw some familiar pieces of furniture in the entryway, so he knew he was in the right house. No one else was around to talk to, so he went upstairs to try to figure out which room was his room. When he got to the head of the stairs, he took a look in several rooms, and it became completely obvious which one was his because it had all his stuff in it. Now, it was set up in a strange way, and he quickly thought, I'm not real happy about the way they put it together, but it's going to be okay. So he found his room and put his things away. He went downstairs and greeted his sister Charlotte, who was taking a break from her French horn practice. He also found his parents in the kitchen and greeted them. He was really happy to be home from college. David has completed his fall semester exams, and his grades have been posted, and he's satisfied with his grades. He did rather well. David doesn't really know what he wants to major in. He went off to college to try to figure out what his field of study will be. He likes everything, but he doesn't feel that he's really drawn to anything in particular. He made good grades in high school, but he never really found a specific field that drew him in. So he is hoping that his experience in the first couple of years of college will introduce him to things that will allow him to select his major and develop a career. This first semester, he took the usual general education classes. These are classes required of all the students, and they are not specific to any particular major. He had to take an English class, so he selected a composition class. Unfortunately, he didn't like that at all. The teacher in the class is a graduate student who didn't seem very interested, and that lack of interest on the part of the teacher seems to have affected the students' feelings about the class as well. He got a C in that class. His math class was very familiar. It was an algebra review, and he got an A in that. Similarly, his biology class was very straightforward. It was a review class of zoology, and he found it very straightforward. He got a solid B in that class. The class he liked the most was computer sciences. This was Introduction to Computer Sciences, and they mostly worked with Python. David was already familiar with Python, so he found the programming part of the class very straightforward. He really enjoyed the class, and he has a suspicion that his career may be in the computer sciences realm. He's not sure yet. The only other class he took was the required physical education class, and he wasn't interested in any of the options, so he took tennis. He did learn something very valuable in his tennis class. He learned beyond a doubt that he did not like tennis. Now, the physical education classes at this university are pass-fail, and he passed the tennis class. When David got home, he was starving, so he fixed himself a snack in the kitchen and then joined his dad in the living room to have a talk. He just wanted to catch up on things and spend some time with his dad. So he settled into a comfortable chair and they started talking. His dad asked him a bunch of questions about his experience at school, what he had learned, what he liked, what he didn't like. It was a very pleasant discussion. When they got to the physical education class, David was fairly proud that he had really learned something from his PE class. He had learned that he doesn't want to play tennis. And his dad smiled and said, well, that may be true, but bear in mind, we humans change as we develop in life, and our attitudes change. Things that we like or dislike when we're young may be looked at very differently in a few decades. He said, bear in mind, when you are my age, you might find tennis fascinating. David shrugged and said, well, maybe. They talked about the computer sciences class, and David speculated that maybe he would need to upgrade his laptop at some point in the future. His laptop is almost 2 years old. His dad winced. He wasn't real excited about spending more money on a new computer, but maybe it's necessary. About this time, David's mom came in and said, David, have you been smoking? David felt a chill because he didn't have a ready answer. The topic wasn't one he wanted to discuss, and he just didn't have a ready answer. And so he rather skillfully turned to her and said, why would you say that? Putting the question back to her. He wanted to know what sort of evidence there was so that he could better craft a response. He was also stalling for time. He needed time to think about this. His mom said, your clothes smell like smoke. They smell like tobacco smoke. Well, with that physical evidence that he'd been smoking, he figured that honesty was by far the only legitimate path going forward. He said, yes, I did try smoking a pipe, but I really didn't enjoy it, so I don't think I'm going to continue doing it. And then without being questioned, he said, pipe smoke seems to smell good, but I didn't realize I was going to burn my tongue and not be able to taste anything for a week. His mom smiled and said, don't forget, most nice girls don't want to date a smoker. And then she left, back to the laundry room to continue with her chores. It was at this point David looked back at his dad, who was smiling, and David was wondering, what's that all about? His dad said, like father, like son. And then he explained that when he was a freshman in college, he had also tried smoking a pipe and had similarly burned his tongue and lost interest in it completely. His dad asked him what it was like at college. What were his experiences? The good things, the bad things, the surprises. What was it like? His dad was legitimately interested in his answers, but he was also living vicariously because his dad enjoyed his years in college and was to a certain extent reliving his own experiences through his son's tales. David talked about the various people in the dormitory. He said, they're very smart people, but some of them are kind of strange. He described 3 guys in the dormitory who live across the hall from him. They are on scholarship from England for the soccer team. They talk very funny. They are from Liverpool. He explained to his dad how peculiar these guys are. He was particularly impressed with Sully, Nick Sullivan. Nick is short, stocky, with giant legs. These 3 guys are apparently pretty good soccer players, but they barely passed their courses. They were doing badly at mid-semester, so the coach got them tutors, and they worked hard to keep from failing their classes, because if they fail their classes, they lose their scholarship, and that's the end of that. It appears that they will be back for the spring semester. David explained to his dad that his big surprise was just how many smart people there were in this college. He was used to the environment of high school, where it seemed to David nobody was really paying much attention, and classes were super easy. At the university, he finds the classes much more challenging and the other students in the class much more focused. David's dad asked him if he'd met any interesting girls at school. And David shrugged. He said, "I've gone out a couple of times with a girl named Jenny. I met her in the biology class and we started talking, so I asked her out. I'm not sure that we have enough in common that we will continue seeing each other." At that point, his dad said, "Well, be careful about that, because it is important to have some things in common, but frequently good couples are made up of people who are actually very different and have very different interests. You do need something in common, but it doesn't have to be everything. A lot of times a good partner is more of a complement than a match." In society, they talk about finding your match, but they don't always tell you that your match may be your opposite. David understood that. He said, "Oh, yes." His dad finished off by saying, "Give it a chance. There's no hurry. Maybe you're meant for each other, maybe you're not." At the moment, David's dad is thinking back fondly about his time in college. David is thinking about what sort of new laptop he should be getting. David's mom is trying to figure out how to get the smoky smell out of David's clothes. And we can hear Charlotte practicing her French horn in the background in a distant room with the door closed. If you like videos like this for comprehensible input, chock full of English expressions and vocabulary, then be sure to click on this one next. See you soon.